Welcome to all delegates to this 2021 Spring STM Conference, and in particular today, the Society Day event. As the Chair of the Board of STM, I am delighted to open this virtual meeting. And a year has passed since our last spring meeting, and while a year ago we were grappling with how to adapt as we entered the pandemic, it does feel as though we're approaching a time when face-to-face meetings in the West may once again become possible. It's early days, but hopefully green shoots of hope from which we will get back towards the normality. Now, as many of you will be aware, I should note that STM CEO Ian Moss will depart for a new role later this year. The board has met to discuss this and are in the process of making arrangements to ensure STM remains on course to support its members and our industry while we initiate a search for a new CEO. Having also met with STM staff on this matter, I'm confident their dedication, experience and drive will ensure we maintain momentum on the key strategic initiatives underway and are so important at such a crucial time for our industry. And I'd like to thank Ian today for his great support and vision in leading STM since he joined, and wish him well for the future at Radio Centre when he joins them later this year. Now, returning to today and to this event, well, during the spring conference spanning the 3 days, we will explore many of the diverse opportunities and challenges that exist both inside and outside our business. From the continued advancement of research dissemination to the dangers of cybersecurity, and then the harnessing of benefits from AI. So we will hear just how dynamic and active our industry is right now. The underlying constant remains the perpetual need for high quality, trusted research, particularly during times of global crisis. So to introduce today's programme, the event has secured an exceptional group of speakers. You will hear updates on key industry initiatives with a focus on how they apply to non-profit and society publishers. And in this context, we will hear about the main technology innovations and workflow improvement initiatives in train right now. Additionally, we will be hearing from a range of publishers on how they bring their publishing skills and resources to serve the mission of their parent organisation more deeply. And with increasing recognition of the societal benefit from having a truly trusted and authoritative research communication system, we will hear how publishers are committed to support the objectives of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and how they are innovating to bring greater value to those beyond the traditional academic community. So a great day lies ahead today, and this will continue over Wednesday when we talk about security, sharing and staying at home. And then on Thursday, where we focus on industry-wide innovations, including the launch of STM Trends 2025 and the focus on AI best practice. So throughout the 3 days, the programme seeks to encompass strategic thinking and the key drivers shaping the future of the broad research communications industry. And I really look forward to a great event ahead of us. Now, before I close my opening remarks, I'd like to warmly thank our sponsors for today who have supported this virtual event, and that is now more than ever truly appreciated. So thank you to Highwire, to J&J Editorial, to Scholastica, and to Silverchair. And thank you to those 4 organisations and the executives who have committed their support to this meeting. So with this, I'll now introduce Andrea Powell to introduce herself, the first session entitled Publishing with Purpose, and to really start the conference. Andrea is STM's Director of Outreach and the Publisher Coordinator for Research for Life. So Andrea, over to you, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Jim. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great privilege to be chairing this first session of the 2021 STM Spring Conference Society Day. As Jim said, I'm Andrea Powell, I'm STM's Director of Outreach, and I coordinate the Research for Life programme from the publisher's point of view. So just some housekeeping rules. Please remember to mute yourself during today's session and to keep your camera switched off unless you're speaking. Non-profit or mission-led publishers have always played a special role in scholarly communication. Seen as being more deeply embedded into the specialist communities they serve, They have a reputation for making business decisions based not only on financial considerations, but also on the alignment with the parent organization's mission and values. This mission-led approach predates the COVID pandemic or the United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development by many years, if not decades or even centuries. However, recent events have shone a light on how the management and dissemination of knowledge brings societal benefits well beyond the confines of academia and financial returns. The constraints of the COVID pandemic have created new opportunities for non-profit publishers, both to deliver their core mission to their membership base in more diverse and innovative ways, and to demonstrate to the wider population how their professional skills and activities can add to global development. Today, we have 4 excellent speakers who will each consider this aspect of their publishing program and illustrate how their organizations are responding to new challenges and opportunities to better meet their mission. Our speakers are Dr. Eric Rubin, Editor-in-Chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, Rachel Martin, Information Industry Relations and Communications Manager for Elsevier, Philippa Grand, Publisher for International Development and Interdisciplinarity at Bristol University Press, and Elizabeth Nolan, Deputy Executive Director and Chief Publishing Officer at the Optical Society, the OSA. As we have quite a tight timetable today, I'm going to ask you to hold questions until the end of the session, when we will hopefully have some time to deal with them. So without further ado, I would like to invite Eric Rubin to open this session and to talk about challenges for medical journals during the great pandemic of 2020. Dr. Rubin, the floor is yours. Eric, can we hear you? I can't hear you, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry. I think that should work, right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Now starting again. And I'll share my screen again. There we go. Okay, so we have faced all of the same challenges in that everyone else has during the pandemic, not least of which has been a change in office scenery from our usual offices space, which is in the Countway Medical Library at Harvard Medical School. And now the decorations are very different in the office that I'm in right now. And along the way, the challenges we have faced have not only been in location, but in how we publish. And today, I'd like to cover very briefly some of our challenges. And I think I'm going to have more questions than answers today, but I do want to go through what we've done. Now, we have been able to do a lot. We've published along with the Lancet on the same day. We published the first case of the COVID-19 from China. The first transmission dynamics, which showed that very early on, this disease was transmitting from human to human, not as was thought from animal to human. The first case in the US, and some of the important articles about vaccines. And all of that has come at something at many costs to us. One cost is strictly financial. We, like many other journals, have made all of our material freely available immediately. And since that represents a lot of what we published, that means that maybe half of all the material that we publish is available on the web. We're a subscriber-based, we have a subscriber-based model, so we're giving away a lot of the content that we would ordinarily charge for, and that means that our revenues are not benefited in any way from the outbreak. And so what are the challenges we faced? I'm going to go through a few of them. The first is the volume of submissions and publications. Our volume spiked enormously. This is simply submissions for research articles altogether. We received more than 30,000 items, and it didn't come across evenly. It wasn't evenly spread through the year. At our peak in last spring, we were receiving more than 200 submissions, research submissions a day, 7 days a week. When our normal rate is something on the order of 20 a day. So this we really had to ramp up quite a bit. These are all the submissions. I said they're somewhere over 35,000. And our publishing model is a little different from many of yours. We're a small operation, and we've grown up very gradually over 200 years and ended up with a model where we do virtually everything in-house. From the time that a manuscript hits the door until it goes to the printer, everyone who touches that manuscript is a full-time employee, or virtually everyone is a full-time employee, or occasionally a part-time employee. And during the outbreak, we have not been able to hire anybody new, so our staffing is exactly the same as it was before the outbreak occurred. So that has put a lot of pressure on our staff. Now, there are pluses and minuses. The disadvantage, of course, is we can't call in lots more help when we need it, and we haven't done so. The advantage has been that we have very dedicated people who are willing to work on Friday nights and Saturday nights and through the weekend, as has happened very frequently. We're asking a lot of them, but these are people who do believe in our mission, and we've been very, very fortunate to have people who are willing to put in this kind of time. Now, another issue is timing. We're an academic journal, and we're not a newspaper, and we do all the traditional things that we've always done through COVID-19. That means when we get a manuscript, we look at it, we send it for external peer review. We then edit it. If we're going to accept it, we edit it very heavily, more heavily than most journals do, so that the finished published paper usually doesn't look all that much like the submitted manuscript in the end. And that all takes time. Now, we've compressed those timelines tremendously. For example, for this article, which described one of the vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine in this case, we were able to publish it at about 9 in the morning on December 10th, even though we'd only had it in-house for a relatively short time. And that allowed us to get it out on the day that it was, that should be December 10th, 2020, sorry, on the day that the FDA panel was meeting. And that is I think a big advantage. It allowed physicians and researchers to see the data that the FDA was considering at the same time that the FDA was looking at it. On the other hand, there have been cases of blood clotting associated with various vaccines. This one is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and we published the first case report of blood clotting in connection with vaccination, and we published that on April 14th after rushing it through the system. But the story broke in the news on April 13th. Now, yeah, there's some pride involved. Of course, we want to be the people breaking interesting and important news stories. But there's also, as a medical publication, our job is to get the full data set out to physicians and researchers so that they can look at it rather than read the New York Times, which I think does an excellent job of covering these stories, but doesn't have the kind of granularity that might be important in decision making for either for individuals or for organizations. So I think we aren't always getting things out there the way that we, in order to have the impact that we can. and we are trying, but it's not how we're built. Another problem is how long-lived stories are going to be, and what I'm calling evanescence here. Let me show you a few things we've published recently. All three of these, these are letters. All three of these letters talk about the early effectiveness, the real world effectiveness of vaccination in various populations. These are all healthcare workers within a healthcare system. And all the letters conclude, wow, it really works. It looks like in the real world, this vaccine works over a short time in a limited number of people. That's really interesting, right? And I think it was very important when we published it last month. This month, it's no longer important. We have population-based data showing that in the UK, in the US, in Israel, the levels of disease have dropped dramatically over populations. And so we think of ourselves as a journal of record. We're publishing not just for tomorrow, but publishing for posterity. And yet we've had to try to balance the importance of getting a message out there that's important today versus a message that's going to have any long-lasting effect. And from a purely cross perspective, no one is ever going to refer to these articles again or read them again in another year because they won't be interesting any longer. So we're trying to draw a balance between being of the moment and being and having some permanence. Now, rushing everything has its issues, but actually I don't think this one is particularly an issue of rushing. Let me show you three articles we published back very early on in the epidemic. The question had been raised about certain types of blood pressure medicine. So these blood pressure medicines had some indirect influence on the receptor to which the virus, SARS-CoV-2, that causes COVID-19 can bind. And the thinking was that using these drugs, which are very commonly used in people with blood pressure problems or heart failure, might either increase or decrease the risk of disease. And so we received 3 articles about this. We published all 3 of them. And subsequently, one of them turned out to be fake. The data probably don't exist. It probably was a complete fabrication. Now, what are the lessons we can take from this? Were these hurried through? Yes, although not excessively. Certainly, it's not as quickly as some of the articles that we've gotten through. And these 3 articles all underwent a peer review, and questions weren't really raised, I have to say, about this article. And yet we did miss some things. Now, I think and I think we've taken some lessons away from that in how we should be looking at these types of data. But there's a bigger issue here. These studies are all what are called retrospective case control studies, and they're not the kind of thing we publish. In the sort of pantheon of medical research, these are considered to be moderate quality studies. The evidence isn't that strong that they can produce. And in these cases, they were not particularly strong. And under ordinary circumstances, we just wouldn't publish this whole genre. But the question was really important. If you're a doctor and you have a patient in front of you who is on these drugs, should they take them or should they stop them? And doctors need to know that right away. And we can't wait around necessarily for the highest quality data. We're stuck with lower quality data. In this case, we had 3 articles, three manuscripts, which all suggested the same conclusion, that these medications are safe, something which has been largely borne out in subsequent work. And so we decided to go with it. But again, under ordinary circumstances, we would not have been there. All of this was occurring in a difficult political environment, and I'm sure that all of your journals encountered this. We could not have an editorial meeting without someone raising this week's horror that occurred, a usually in our case, a federal government ruling or action, which really undercut medicine or public health. And we, like many journals, eventually ended up publishing an editorial about that for the first time in our 200-year history, arguing that we needed a change in leadership. We really was a very political editorial. It's not something that we want to do, and it's not something I'd ever like to repeat. I hope it's at least another 200 years before we're put in a situation to do it. And that has received a very mixed response for us. I will say that many of the scientific journals which published similar articles got very positive responses from their readers. And in our case, we got some positive responses. For example, we were quoted, or actually our name was misquoted by now President Biden in one of the debates he had before the election, we were quoted as a New England Medical Journal. So we got some positive exposure, but our readers, who include physicians, come from across the political spectrum. And I'd say that the responses that we got in letters to the editor ran about 70-30 against our position. Now, I think this one was a pretty easy call. We felt very strongly that that sending this message was important for medicine and for public health. Yet it does cost us. And then finally, there are opportunity costs. We've spent so much time on COVID-19. What are we not doing? I think we've gotten to do some things. I mean, we're still publishing articles on heart disease, on new types of therapies. This is an RNA therapy. On CRISPR-Cas9 editing in humans. This is the first example, in a couple of blood diseases, and infectious disease outside of COVID-19. And then we've had to face the same issue that many of us are facing, which isn't another outbreak, but it's something that has been around for a long time, just brought to the fore, which is issues of racism in medicine and in public health. And we've tried to do what we can, but we haven't done enough. So I think one of the missed opportunities for us is that we haven't been able to tend to our own house in the case of diversity and inequities, even though we have been able to publish quite a bit. I think that I came to the journal, I was hired in fall of 2019, just before this occurred. And I'm an infectious disease guy. I have no idea how the Mass Medical Society, our publisher, chose an infectious disease guy right before a huge infectious disease outbreak. But I'm pleased that they did. But I came with the idea of changing things. We're an old journal, we need to modernize. And I think we have not been able to do as much as we'd like to do because of the outbreak. Nevertheless, I'm still very proud of what we've done.
It's working again.
I'm very proud of what we've done, and I'm very proud of the people that I work with who've done such a tremendous job, and the tremendous support from our publishers through all of this. So thank you, and I'll stop.
Thank you, Eric, for that fascinating insight into the challenges you've faced over the last several months. And I think you've really effectively illustrated that providing a societal benefit, reaching beyond our traditional markets, can come with a cost as well. And I think you gave some excellent examples of that. Thank you. So moving along, our next speaker is Rachel Martin from Elsevier, and she's going to introduce to us the recently launched SDG Publisher Compact. And then she's going to be followed directly by Philippa Grand from Bristol University Press, who will explain how her organisation has embraced the challenges of mission-led publishing. So Rachel, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm just going to share my screen. And hopefully start my video. Nope, I can't do that. I'll do it without my video. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Andrea, for the introduction. I'm talking about something very near and dear to my heart, which is sustainability. My name is Rachel Martin. I'm in a new position, a Global Director of Sustainability at Elsevier. And I was intricately involved in a project, a collaboration between the United Nations and the International Publishers Association, which resulted in something called the SDG Publishers Compact. And so today I'm going to give you a very high level, broad overview of the goals, the need for action, and of course, some information about the SDG Publishers Compact. So to get started, what is sustainability? So as Andrea said in the introduction, I'm speaking to the converted here. You are all purpose-driven organizations. And as such, you all stand for and take action on things just beyond producing the products and services. And sustainability is really looking at defining what that vision of purpose might look like. Sustainability, as defined by the United Nations, is really about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And, you know, if we boil it all down, it's about working together to get that inclusive, sustainable, and resilient society for both people and planet. And the Sustainable Development Goals is the roadmap of which to achieve that vision. And it was unanimously voted by all 193 UN member states back in 2015. And we have until 2030 in which to realize these ambitions. And they're lofty ambitions. It ranges from no poverty to addressing the climate emergency to creating sustainable cities. And so what exactly is this roadmap? The roadmap is 17 goals. They're interlinked. So progress on one requires progress to be made across multiple others. So for example, if I take no poverty, you need to make progress in quality education, gender equality, decent work, and economic growth. And underlying all of these 17 goals are really specific targets and indicators. And you have the example here of quality education. There's 10 specific actions that require progress to be made in order to achieve that quality education goal. Yet as we started 2020, the world wasn't on track. We weren't on track to meet actually any of the 17 SDGs. At our current rate of progress, it would take 257 years to close the economic gender pay gap. And for climate, the UN carbon emissions report 2020 indicated that we're on the pathway for a more than 3 degree global temperature rise before the end of the century. And that's even if the climate commitments are made. Now, we've heard the impact of the pandemic from Eric, but also the pandemic has an impact on the SDGs. And in some cases, it's stalled and even reversed key progress on no poverty and quality education. But it's not a doom and gloom situation. It is an opportunity. We're looking at recovery plans at the moment, and putting sustainability at the heart of those recovery plans is really crucial. The UNDP produced their report at the end of last year, which actually said by making interventions now, we can dramatically change that worst case scenario. The same emissions report published in December 2020 actually stated that choices that we make today will actually result in a 25% cut in emissions, expected emissions in 2030, by simply making sure that our recovery is a low carbon recovery. So we know actions there, we have the roadmap in which to do it. The question you might be thinking of is, what exactly do publishers contribute? And I like to think about this in two big buckets. The first, of course, is getting our own house in order. Eric referred to it in his presentation just before me. This is looking at, what work practices do we have? What's our processes? What's our operations? And can we have sustainability at the heart of those? And this can cover things such as fair work practices. So for example, I've given you a here Wiley statement about modern slavery statement. It can be about diversity and inclusion. And we did a great, Elsevier did a great webinar with the Copyright Clearance Center, where we talked about, how do we as publishers support racial equality? And of course, it's about the environmental impact of our business practices. And I was really encouraged to see Springer Nature last week actually sign up to the Climate Pledge, and they'll be net zero by 2040. The other big bucket is to really think of us as catalysts of change, promoting the principles behind the goal. So not only do we start thinking not about our own work processes, but how we can actually move the needle in the communities that we operate in. And, you know, that could be as simple as promoting content related to the global goals themes or tagging or cataloging, but it could also be looking at collaborations, thinking through how we can do our things differently in order to make an impact. And some great examples that I can highlight is Emerald does a great diversity and inclusion survey and report. Springer Nature has an SDG program themselves. And on the Elsevier side, we've actually established a resource center where we tag and share the latest research through a dedicated research center. We've also done some work in terms of mapping the research trends of SDG related research, and we did a report. I encourage you to go have a look at it. Maybe it sparks some creative ideas. But it could be that this is all a lot. I mean, it's a big picture, you know, 17 goals, where do you start? I think it's about defining where your destination wants to be. And I think the SDGs do a great job in defining that destination. And making a simple commitment can be a first step of which to think about how we might accelerate progress towards that 2030 deadline. And it was really the impotence for the SDG Publishers Compact. And I'm super excited to say that nearly 100 fellow publishers and publishing organizations have signed up. SDM have signed up, and ALPS have also signed up. Elsevier, Springer Nature, and Philippa from Bristol University Press, who will follow me, has also signed up. And they join publishers who can be tiny indie publishers based out of Brooklyn to big multinationals. And so our Publishers Compact, it was basically a concrete list of steps publishers can take to accelerate progress. And it was designed to be inclusive. And so you might be thinking, what exactly have we committed to? I think it's important to think about it in 3 buckets. The first, of course, is being able to prioritize sustainability. So this is talking about committing to the SDGs, you know, putting it on your website, having someone within your organization thinking about sustainability, raising awareness amongst your own staff, amongst suppliers. And of course, you know, we're not interested in greenwashing, pinkwashing, or whatever washing is in fad at the moment. What we are about is about taking action. So that could be collaborating as individual businesses with our communities. It could be collaborating as a sector. It could be just thinking about taking one particular goal, or if you're particularly ambitious, multiple, and really thinking about how you can make an impact on that particular goal. And so saying that, I think, you know, it's useful for us to have a little bit of a reflection and kind of think, you know, we're sitting here in 2021, where will we be as a sector in 2030? You know, are we going to be a net zero sector? Will we be the first net zero sector? You know, how inclusive and diverse will we be both within our workforce, but also in terms of scholarly communication? Will we have that front and center? And in terms of the ready for the next pandemic, will we have automated and address those issues that Eric so eloquently highlighted before me? And so these are really big, meaty questions to get your brains thinking. And if you have solutions, if you have ideas, connect with me. I would love to know. But at the minimum, go to the UN website, check the SDG Publishers Compact, and definitely, you know, put it on your board meeting, have a discussion. It takes 2 minutes to sign up. I would love to see loads of society publishers signed up in the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. That was terrific. I'm going to hand straight to Philippa to follow that. Thank you.
Hello, just sharing my screen here. It wants to do it. Here we go. Okay, hello. So my name is Philippa Grand, and I'm the publisher at Bristol University Press, where part of my role has involved looking at changing research practices and how we as a publisher should respond. So for those who don't know us, I just wanted to give a quick history of the press. We were founded in 1996 as Policy Press, a department within the University of Bristol in the UK. And in 2016, we established Bristol University Press to allow us to publish across a broader range of subjects, and Policy Press has now become an imprint of BUP. We're not for profit, we're a small press of around 50 people, but we've got big plans and we've already doubled in size since the setting up of BUP. We publish around 300 books per year in a range of formats, including scholarly and trade, and publish around 16 journals. And our focus is primarily on the social sciences.
Yeah, so the FDA has just...
So today I'm going to talk about how purpose is embedded in our mission as a publisher and always has been, the changes going on in the research landscape, and the new focus on challenge-led research, and how we see our mission developing in future, and how this coincides with us addressing the SDGs. So I wanted to start with this quote I found as I was preparing this presentation on the role of publishing in society. I think it's a really nice quote. Publishing as a cultural practice contributes to or even constitutes who we are as individuals, who we are as citizens. It is a socio-cultural activity that helps us understand our place in the world. Publishing expresses and shapes our societies. It even plays a part in the kinds of nations we live in. And I think that demonstrates really nicely why some of the motivations perhaps why the UN have set up the Publisher Compact, and more generally why publishing for purpose matters. So we at BUP have signed up to the Publisher Compact and were the first university press to do so, and perhaps still the only university press. But for us, signing up won't provide a radically new direction or new focus for the press. We have long known the importance of publishing in shaping our world, and publishing with purpose for social good or to support positive change has always been at the heart of our mission. As policy press, the link between research, policy and practice has always been central. Commissioning under this imprint tends to be thematic, allowing for a focus on substantive, real-world, policy-facing issues such as poverty, inequality, ageing, health and social justice. And we also have a focus on applied areas like social work and social care. Under BUP, we have a more traditional focus on commissioning via disciplines, but we also structure commissioning around what we've called global social challenges, which are very much aligned with the topics that the SDGs cover. And underpinning all this has been our not-for-profit status, which means we have the freedom to be mission-driven first and foremost, and make publishing decisions based on quality and social relevance rather than commercial imperatives. So how do we ensure that our publishing makes a difference, has a wide reach and makes an impact? I think there are four main ways, which I've listed here. So firstly, speedy publication models. These allow us to publish in a timely way in order to intervene in debates at just the right moment. Under our shorts format, we publish books between 30 to 50,000 words, and these publish within 3 to 4 months of acceptance of a final manuscript, and we can make them available at a lower price too. One really successful example here is this book, Repealing the Eighth. We published this book swiftly to enable the book to have an impact on the Irish abortion referendum debates in 2018, and it was widely used by activists as a key campaign tool. It was published open access, but also sold over 800 copies as well. With the outbreak of the pandemic, we saw it as vital that voices from the social sciences were heard alongside those of scientists. And we launched our rapid responses format to enable publication of work on an even shorter timetable within 6 weeks of receiving a final typescript. And I put some of the examples of our rapid responses publishing on this slide, including COVID-19 in the Global South. This book published within just 5 months from my initial email to editors about the idea. The book published open access and has had over 19,000 downloads since publication in October. As a press that publishes for a general as well as a scholarly audience, this means we can work with academic authors where we see wider potential and can help them develop their work for a broader readership. And I've published a range of examples from our trade publishing on this slide, including the book Injustice. This book came about when geographer Danny Dorling came to us as an early career scholar with a proposal to publish 5 academic monographs. We saw potential in his ideas and worked with him on the project to develop a single book for a general readership. The book is now in its 2nd edition and has sold over 10,000 copies. Danny is now an established commentator on social issues and has gone on to publish with top trade houses. Our approach to marketing focuses on making sure our books have as broad an impact as possible. Alongside standard marketing strategies, we will also look to place articles in the broadsheet media, political magazines, and influential blogs about research findings. We target policymakers working on specific policy issues, and our books have been quoted by politicians.
I'm good, thank you.
Sorry, there's a bit of feedback.
Yes. Sorry, could everybody please mute their microphones?
Great, thank you.
It is, yes.
We target politicians and policymakers working on specific policy issues, and our books have been quoted by politicians, used in green papers and parliamentary briefings. And we work with authors to develop supplementary material that will help their work have a wider reach. So, for example, policy briefs, case studies, additional data, audio, infographics, introductory tasters, and reading guides. It really depends on the book and the audience what would achieve the best reach and engagement. In thinking about how different books require different strategies, we have engaged with new digital formats. We publish our own blog, Transforming Society, and see this as particularly important as a platform for our authors and others to join the conversation on topical issues and stories in the news. We also produce podcasts, and during the pandemic, we launched a series of successful webinars too, and plan to carry these on into the future. We also publish the Futures of Work blog, edited by 3 academics. And this is a cross between a journal, an online magazine, and a blog. And it allows for research to be published without a paywall and build a readership both within and beyond academia. And I've included there a quote from a Cambridge scholar responding to the launch of the blog. I wanted to give you a couple of examples of our approach in action. There's very many to choose from, but I focused in on just 2. So our book, The Story of Baby P, on the high-profile death of a 17-month-old baby in the UK in 2007, was referenced in oral and written evidence to parliamentary select committees, featured in the media internationally, including a BBC One documentary, and helped change media reporting on the story in the UK. For our book, The Class Ceiling, we got widespread press attention for the book's findings. The book featured heavily in a BBC Two documentary, How to Break into the Elite. And we developed a targeted campaign focused on HR departments with a 10-point plan to tackle discrimination within workplaces. And the authors have gone on to advise several organisations on their recruitment and HR policies. So we've always had a social mission, always been a publisher with purpose, always valued research that can make a difference, and looked at ways that we as a publisher can add value in helping it to do so. And it's clear now that the research landscape is moving towards being more mission-driven itself, with a shift to challenge-led research. This type of research is focused on complex problems of our time and requires particular methods and practices. It's a type of approach that is needed to address many of the SDGs. We see this shift in funding agencies who are focusing calls around defined challenges, as are private philanthropic organisations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We see it in universities who are setting up university-wide initiatives, such as UCL's Grand Challenge Programme, or Princeton's Global Strategies Initiative, or the University of Bristol's university-wide research institutes, which focus on researching global challenges, and there are many more examples of these kinds of initiatives. We're seeing the emergence of global challenge courses and even whole degrees, and increasing interest in how best to train a new generation of students to solve these challenges in the real world. There's also been the launch of a new ranking system. The Times Higher Education's Impact Rankings assesses universities against the SDGs in 4 areas: research, stewardship, outreach and teaching. Plus a report published in February this year by the European University Association entitled Universities Without Walls sets out a vision for Europe's universities for 2030 and stated that a guiding principle was to link knowledge and solutions so that people, the planet and prosperity are in balance. This is all in contrast to traditional curiosity-driven research, which tends to be more focused on creating new knowledge within disciplines rather than being outwardly focused. And this kind of challenge-led research has 5 main characteristics. It's focused on problems in the real world and providing solutions. It's interdisciplinary in recognition that no one discipline can solve these complex challenges. It uses co-production and participatory methods involving experts from outside the academy. And we see this in the rise of citizen science projects, for example. It needs to be diverse. It needs contributions from those with diverse experiences from different contexts, which means, for example, ensuring diverse research teams and ensuring a more equitable relationship in knowledge production between the global north and south. And in needing to have real world impact, it's underpinned by the need for open scholarship. Ooh. So at BUP, there's already much that we're doing to support the SDGs, particularly in the subjects we publish and how we look to amplify what we publish. The next steps for us in supporting the UN Publisher Compact is to create an environment where the practices that underlie challenge-led research can flourish. So in looking at interdisciplinarity, we need to look at new ways, and we are looking at new ways for readers to explore and discover our content, including via SDG categories rather than via disciplines. We're exploring how editors can collaborate and commission in new ways beyond their disciplinary focus, and we're examining how best to carry out peer review for interdisciplinary work. With our background in applied research, we have long championed research using participatory methods, and now this approach is being backed by funders such as Horizon Europe and the Knowledge Exchange Framework in the UK, as it's seen as a way to produce research that will lead to change. We see a role for a university press in validating this type of research, which can be viewed as not as high quality as pure academic research. Further, this type of research often produces a range of outputs that don't fit with traditional publishing models. How might formats need to adapt to accommodate this type of research as it rises up funder agendas? On the diversity front, we already have a number of initiatives in place. We're part of an Association of University Presses pilot scheme to track diversity statistics across the press in terms of authors, reviewers, and advisory board members. We're addressing diversity in our staff too, partnering with organisations to improve diversity across the team. We're part of, Andrea will be pleased to hear, we're part of the Research for Life initiative, which provides free or low cost access to our publications in the Global South. And we're also looking at how we can best support research emanating from the Global South too. And our new series, Key Issues in Social Justice, publishes work from authors from underrepresented and marginalised groups. We also see that our OA strategy can no longer just be reactive, no longer just another part of our offering, but we need to be proactive in developing this in support of challenge-led research. So we're looking at funding models beyond the BPC and the APC, and looking at possibilities of support from within our university to further help support their own mission around challenge-led research. One initiative has brought all these elements together. This is our new Global Social Challenges Journal, which officially launched just this week. So as you would expect, this journal is all these things I've been talking about. It's open access. It will publish interdisciplinary and co-produced work, including work on the theories and methods that underlie these approaches. It will publish traditional and non-traditional outputs. We will be publishing in thematic areas aligned with the SDGs rather than being disciplinary based. Diversity is a key aspect in terms of those who are working on the journal, but also we will have an emphasis on publishing marginalised, minority and Indigenous worldviews, and there will be an engagement with decolonial and Southern theory. We will be looking to engage a range of audiences, and the journal will be policy facing. And we will draw on our experience to help the research we publish have wide reach. So to sum up, publishing with purpose is in our DNA. It's who we are. And as we are entering into a new era of challenge-led research, our approach continues to evolve. This type of research will be vital in addressing the SDGs, and engaging with it is how we see ourselves in fulfilling our responsibilities as signatories to the UN Publisher Compact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippa, for a very inspirational presentation. And thank you also for the plug for Research for Life, much appreciated. I think one of the observations that I had when I first read the Agenda for Sustainable Development from the United Nations was that there was no single goal to deliver, to achieve global access to knowledge. What instead the agenda makes clear is that access to knowledge is a catalyst for development. It isn't a development outcome. And by participating in Research for Life, many publishers are already have already met one of the challenges set out in the SDG Publisher Compact. So any publishers on this at this conference who aren't yet participating in Research for Life and see that as a way to help their to help fulfill their commitment to the SDG Publisher Compact, then obviously they can reach out to me, and I'll be happy to provide more information. So we're going to move on now to our final speaker of today's session, and I'm delighted to introduce Elizabeth Nolan. As I've said earlier, Elizabeth is the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Publishing Officer at the OSA. And Elizabeth's going to take us through some of the initiatives that her organisation has taken during the pandemic in order to deepen the quality of the member experience at OSA and to support the mission of the organisation in these troubled and challenging times. All yours, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome all. I'm delighted to be here rounding out the group. And as Andrea shared, for us, the pandemic gave rise to some new opportunities for mission-based publishing. So first, just to give a little background on OSA, we're more than 100 years old. We started in 1916. We are completely volunteer run, and that translates to 33 different councils and committees who are providing ongoing leadership and feedback to staff. We have about 150 staff. We're around 22,000 members strong, and we support 432,000 customers across 181 countries. And I should say that that last point is particularly important when we look at what are the four really key pillars that we focus on as staff in supporting our mission. And that first one is that we are inclusively global. We believe that it is our mission to connect our worldwide community. As we've grown, our reach and membership have become increasingly global. From its start as a US organization to now where close to 70% of our membership is global. We unite a diverse international population of physicists, students, engineers, and professionals. Our second pillar really focuses on unsurpassed quality, and we are known to be a respected authority in light science and technology and have done so for more than a century. Our focus is on excellence in everything that we do. The third pillar is really about being a champion of our field. And since our founding, we have been a passionate advocate for talent in our field. We regularly work to convene the brightest minds in optics and photonics to develop their skills and to create career advancing opportunities. And then our last pillar really focuses on being on the forefront on technological change. And for this pillar, it's really all about empowering discovery and innovation. And as a trusted and innovative resource in optics and photonics, we help pave the way for groundbreaking advances in our field. Our community relies on us, and in particular on our publications, programs, events, and advocacy efforts to help them build towards what's next for them. So with this as a bit of background, I'll go into a recent challenge that came from our leadership as a result of the pandemic. Actually, not as a result of the pandemic. The challenge actually came in the form of an aim and a goal in our 2017 to 2021 strategic plan. And back in 2015 and 2016, as we were laying out, our Strategic Planning Council was laying out what the plan should be for the next 5 years. One of the core aims was that it was essential that we continue to be widely known as an authoritative knowledge provider, or put in place their publisher, and a promoter, or put in place their organization that provided events in optics and photonics. And to achieve this, they said one of our goals needed to be an increased level of collaboration between our publishing and meetings programs, because by doing this, we'd be able to better serve the community. So both the meetings and publishing staff got together, and then we had to start thinking about, well, how are we going to achieve this? There were certainly a number of initiatives that were put in place in earlier years, but the pandemic really gave rise to some new ways to do this. And in particular, virtual meetings suddenly presented a very large and new opportunity. So here again, just a little bit of background. Our meetings program typically holds between 40 and 60 meetings per year. But how to do that when we were all on lockdown? So the team, in strong collaboration with our IT group, developed a really new technology solution specific to virtual meetings. And the focus was on global inclusivity. So you'll remember that I said that was one of our 4 pillars. From a practical sense, what that meant was the board made a very conscious decision that all of our 2020 meetings would be free for attendees. And they also put in place a $100 publishing fee for presenters. It wasn't so much about putting a fee in place as it was about making sure that once an author, their abstract was accepted, that they would actually then come to the meeting to present, rather than just let it flow through and be published on our publishing platform. As part of the meeting solution, presenters, in this case, the accepted authors, were given an opportunity to present live or to send in their recording. And then we wanted to make sure that we were providing that connectedness. So we had a moderated live Q&A with all of the authors as part of each session. So after the recordings of the live presentations, we offer live Q&A. Interesting, not only did we get a lot of community members from all over the world, but suddenly the participation changed in a very different way. And that is that those whose first language was not English were suddenly able to type in a question and felt much more comfortable doing so. Their face wasn't there. They weren't being observed in person by somebody else. And so they felt far more comfortable participating. And so the chat function became really a key component of this moderated solution. And by the end of 2020, we had had more than 50,000 attendees from over 100 different countries. And just to put this into perspective, that's 4 times the typical number of attendees. Okay, so with that as context, now I'll move on to, well, what does this mean for the publishing team? And the board said to us, well, we have all of this new content. How is OSA Publishing going to efficiently and effectively both disseminate, which is part of our mission, and archive all of this new conference video recording? And the key there was not only to preserve the recordings, but also to continue to extend the reach of this new content stream. So making sure that out the gate it was free, just as our meetings had been free. First step was we really had to evaluate how we were going to do this. And prior to 2020, back in 2015 and 2016, we had started actually experimenting with conference videos. But what we found was that it was extremely costly. So we had to send staff to meetings, we had to teach them, we had to buy a lot of equipment. And then the solution we put in place, we really missed a couple of key opportunities, and mostly it was, we were still very focused on the conference paper, and the conference video was really more of an afterthought. So its visibility and discoverability was really quite limited. Fast forward to 2020, and suddenly we have some existing technology in place to not only help us create and edit the videos, but also to provide closed captioning, again, for those whose first language is not English. We made a conscious decision that we were not going to go back to the prior recordings. We had about, I don't know, 2,500 recordings previously, and so we weren't going to invest in those. But then we wanted to look at what is our solution going to be? And we quickly made the determination that the user interface not only needed to link the conference paper or needed to provide access to the conference paper, but it also needed to link it to the associated conference video. And that we needed to be able to share this content, as I said before, for free as part of our mission, but also be able to lock it down at a later point in time, because it wasn't always going to be the course of action for us. And then we looked at, well, what are the issues that we really have to deal with? And front and center happened to be licensing and reuse rights. Was the meetings team, when they were offering presenters the opportunity to record their videos and to present, were they actually asking them to sign some type of license or copyright transfer? We had experienced in our prior iteration with conference videos that there were a lot of gaps in metadata quality and in the completeness of that content. So our meetings team is very focused on connecting people. Our publishing team is very focused on making sure that everything that we publish is complete and that all the metadata is there. So our programs came into a bit of conflict because we had different goals. But lastly, we wanted to make sure that whatever we were doing now was much more accessible and discoverable. All right, so with most of the issues on the table, we then needed to look at, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to buy a solution and just bolt it on? So maybe to give a little bit more information here, OSA owns its own platform. We developed it long ago, and we have the IT resources in-house to continue to maintain it. Typically, we have built our own solutions rather than buying them, but, or in this case, probably leasing them. But we needed to do something quickly. And were we going to be able to do that because our IT team was so focused on helping the meetings team with all these meetings? Could we make the time? In the end, we did end up building our own solution and incorporating it into our existing platform. I mentioned before the license agreement. That actually was resolved fairly quickly. We were able to put that in place in the meetings program's peer review system, so that the rights extended not only to the recording for meetings, but also for publishing. And then in terms of solving the metadata and completeness issues, we developed what we call a middleware. It's basically a data repository that sits in the middle of the meetings systems on one side of the middleware, and then the pub systems on the other side. And it provided an opportunity for data to be put in kind of an interim solution where the pubs team could then go and find where there might be challenges so that we could then resolve them before actually publishing the content. Some other gaps we found. I already talked about the first one, the session presenter and related information. That middleware really solved that solution for us. Again, that was a new piece of technology that had to be purpose-built for this. We also wanted to make sure that indexing was available for the video transcripts. So this represented a new form of content, not only the recordings themselves, but the closed caption content, and how, thinking longer term, what would that mean for us, and how could we discover newly emerging trends by interrogating that? The rights and reuse information, I already talked about that. Closed captioning from an accessibility standpoint, and making sure that those folks who were looking at our content from all over the world, if they didn't want to listen to it, they could actually read it, they could do both. And then finally, that quality assurance, we put those steps in place from the very beginning of the meetings process all the way down to the final step before we published. So I'll give just a brief look at the solution itself. So the first thing we did is we said, okay, well, we want this to become really front and center. So at the top of our conference page, we now have a video gallery film strip of the latest videos. And this changes almost daily, given the number of meetings that we publish each year. So every time somebody comes to the home page for our conference papers and videos, they can see something. And the idea is that this film strip will always be free. The second, or I should say that the content in the film strip will always be free. The second part is we started looking at the way we organize the papers and making sure that for every meeting, it was clear to somebody out the gate if there was video content. So you can see in this lower left-hand corner, we have this kind of green icon. I'm just going to blow it up so that green video icon shows for each meeting. In this case, you're seeing 3 different meetings. How many videos are actually part of that particular meeting, and gives an easy indicator to those who are viewing the content. We then said, okay, we have to take it a step farther. So let's look at what happens actually inside a particular meeting. So you'll recognize in the first arrow on the kind of the left-hand side, I showed this where at the top level, it shows that we have 46 session videos. But we also said it could be that someone wants to look at the video gallery. They just want to look at the videos. They don't necessarily want to look at the conference papers. And that I wanted to see within each session, within each meeting. So each of the lines below that start with DF1A, DF2A, those are all individual meeting sessions. Do they have video content as well? For this particular meeting, all of them, you can see they do. And then we took it one step further to say, well, if you opened up a particular session, we also wanted you to see where the particular conference paper also had a video. So these are 3 of the papers, or 3 of the papers and associated videos. You can see that the third one here does not have a video associated with it. I mentioned earlier, we wanted to make sure that there was just a video gallery. Conversely, if you look at the browse by, you can also just look at the papers, and you can search because of the closed captioning text. You can search on both the videos as well as on the papers. This just shows the solution for you come to the abstract page, and it shows you right out the gate, how do I access the article and how do I access the video? And then finally, you're in the video here. So this is an actual video, a screenshot. And on the lower right-hand corner, you have lots of different options. So for those who want closed captioning, they can have it, but they can just as easily turn it off. For those who want a higher level, a higher quality of video, they can determine that themselves. That the one second to the right, where you can see the presenter or not, here in the upper right-hand corner of the title where it says vision augmentation with traditional glasses, you can actually see the speaker presenting. And then you also have the option to watch the video in full screen mode or not, depending on your own personal preference. So that's our video solution in a nutshell. And I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think what we've heard today is, what we've seen are 4 fascinating and stimulating presentations that really excellently illustrate how having a strong sense of purpose can translate into innovation and opportunity, and can really leverage the wide range of skills that are to be found within a publishing company. Of course, not without their challenges, these opportunities, as we've heard, but I think there's been some really thought-provoking ideas presented this morning. So we have about 5-10 minutes before this session closes. I'm going to ask the speakers to switch their cameras and microphones back on. And if anybody would like to ask a question, we're able to use the reactions button so that you can raise your hand, and then you can switch on your microphone and your camera and ask your question directly to any of the speakers. So does anybody want to do that? Now's your chance. Any questions? I shall ask one. Philippa, how does your approach to challenge-led publishing and mission, very much with that sense of purpose you have within your organization, how does that affect your recruitment activities? Does it help you to recruit staff and retain staff, or have you had to retrain staff? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, interesting. I mean, we've been doing several things around diversity with our staff. So we've been partnering with an organisation called Creative Access, and we're part of which helps find people underrepresented within creative industries, find work within creative industries. And we are part of a scheme called Kickstart, I think, which is a government-led scheme, again, for help disadvantaged groups find roles within creative industries. So on that front, yes, but I also think, I mean, people working at BEP are very inspired by our not-for-profit status and inspired by us being mission driven. I think they find that sort of quite unique in the publishing world, maybe at the moment, and it does mean people are really it's a place they work with their whole heart, if you like.
That's good. I'm sure many of our delegates today probably experienced similar reactions and responses within their companies. Elizabeth, I was wondering if I could ask you about member reactions to the initiatives that you talked about in the video. It sounds like you're providing a huge amount of added value. Has it had an increase? Have you seen an increase in membership or just increased engagement with those members?
So I'll say yes and no. In terms of engagement, we have been hearing, especially from areas of the world that have not traditionally been able to participate in our meetings, that suddenly they have access to a wider network. They're seeing research that they can then use in their own deliberations. And so, yes, it's been incredible for them. In fact, we've started a whole new podcast series to hear the voices of those in the community who are suddenly able to access things for the first time ever. In terms of membership, I think many of our organizations, the pandemic had some challenges there. So we were able to maintain, which we thought was actually quite good. we had been growing at about a clip of 1,000 members a year. So maintaining in the pandemic year when there were financial challenges for many of our members, we thought was quite a good outcome.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Thank you. Is Rachel still here? I see that in the chat there's a question for her.
Yes, I'm still
here. Wonderful. Oh, and we can see you. How lovely. So we've got a question from Harpal Minas, who's actually, I know, is with the Royal Society of Chemistry, and is asking what do we need to have in place before signing up to the Publishers Compact, and how does reporting work?
This is a voluntary commitment, so you don't need to have anything in place in order to sign up. You just need to be a real publisher and a publishing organization. So that's the only real check that happens. And then once you're signed up, there's no formal reporting mechanism. We're not auditing the people, but of course what we want to do is inspire action. So we've got a lot of events planned, lots of forums, and so we invite people to participate, and we're working on ways that people can share best practices and encourage others to do and to take action. So it's very much on the voluntary basis, and trying to create a community of publishers and publishing organizations all working in the same direction of sustainability.
Thank you. And I see another question that's come to me about additional actions planned. There are the 10 commitments that publishers sign up to. Is there a thinking about going beyond those, or are we sticking there for now?
So there'll be no expansion of the actual 10 concrete points that people have signed up to, but we're exploring other areas where we might collectively want to move the needle in areas such as climate emergency. So yeah, we're definitely putting our thinking caps on about how we might evolve that. Of course, the International Publishers Association is international, and what we're actually getting feedback on is that, you know, people are at various stages of their sustainability journey. So when we talk to people in Brazil, they're just coming up to the realization of what sustainability is. When we talk to people in the US or the UK, this is bread and butter stuff. So we're really trying to elevate everybody. So we're finding that, you know, along that journey, we're trying to make as dynamic and as engaged in terms of taking action and to really move the needle forward. So it's a challenge, but we hope to be able to ramp our activities up. At least keep your ears to the LinkedIn and to the Twitter, because there'll be lots of stuff happening.
Yes, it'd be great, and maybe we'll be able to meet together in Frankfurt this year. Who knows? And hear progress that's been made since the launch last year.
Definitely. It's one of the reasons why we launched the Compact at Frankfurt, is to really create that forum. I mean, Frankfurt's where the publishing industry is for 1 week or 3 days. So we definitely want to use that as a forum, and they're very much, the Frankfurt Buchmesse have actually signed up. So we're really excited to sort of work with them on a program where sustainability is front and center. So yeah, Frankfurt will be very exciting, and maybe we can meet in person if vaccinations go well.
Yes, it's quite a strange thought, isn't it, at the moment? Yeah, the idea of getting on an airplane and actually meeting people and being able to shake their hands. Okay, so I don't see any other questions coming through chat. I don't see any other hands. So and actually we're pretty much at the end of our slot. So I would like once again to thank our 4 amazing speakers, who I think have all given us a different and very interesting, thought-provoking view of what life's been like within their organizations for some little while, but most particularly over the last few months when we've had these exceptional challenges, but really some very exciting and inspirational stories of growth and success, I think we've heard from this morning. So our host today at STM, Joe, is going to open up some breakout rooms during the 15-minute break that we now have programmed. I would like at this point to take the opportunity to thank again our sponsors for the meeting. So that's Highwire, J&J Editorial, Scholastica, and Silverchair. And during the breakouts, those sponsors are going to be giving presentations, talking to those who join the breakout groups, explaining what they have to offer. And I do encourage you to take advantage of that. The program will start again in 15 minutes time. So that's at 20 minutes past the hour, whichever hour is relevant to you. And thank you all once again very much for your participation, and hopefully you'll have taken away lots of food for thought for your organisations. Thank you.